Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. And let's be honest, some days we're all a bit of a dumpster fire. Joining us inside the Bachelor Pad today is Paul. Paul, thank you so much for making time for us today. We talked about this just a little while ago. I was like, we have kind of a common thing. We both started our podcasting journey, our speaking journey during COVID, hitting our 4-year mark. How's that been for you?
Well, it's been interesting. I'll tell you that. And I got to say, I love the name of your podcast. The Not So Bad Bachelor Pad is the coolest name of a podcast I think I might have ever heard in my life. But
I appreciate that.
well, so before I tell you about how the podcasting's gone, let me just tell your audience a little bit about who I am and where I came from. So I grew up in a small rural town in Colorado, the foothills outside of Denver. My friends and I used to play Indiana Jones and Ninja Warrior out in the woods and stuff like that. And the thing is that I was always kind of a ladies' man, right? I was always really good with women, talking to the girls, never, had that anxiety when talking to girls. So I always had girlfriends growing up. I lost my virginity at 16. I went to 4 proms when I was in high school, right?
Yeah.
And then, but my mindset when it came to dating, which is a lot of what guys have, is this sniper mentality where every girl, you just hone in on one girl and that girl's going to be your wife, right? I'm going to marry this girl, right? That's how a lot of guys do it. And so I had that mentality. Every girlfriend I got, oh, this is it. She's the one. She's my soulmate. And I ended up leaving for the Navy when I was 18. And my second year in the Navy, I met my now ex-wife. And I wasn't even old enough to drink at our wedding. I was 20 years old when I got married, but I was rushing for that white picket fence, and so fast that when we first met, we only knew each other in person for about 4 months before we eloped. Just terrible idea, rushing into marriage before you really even know anybody. You're just completely overlooking red flags and stuff. So fast 15, she filed for divorce, and this is after, we had been married for 14 years at that point, and the last 7 were just terrible. We just didn't get along at all. We were sleeping in separate bedrooms a lot. And when she filed for that divorce, I just had this tremendous weight lifted off my chest. But the problem was I hadn't been in practice dating for 15 years at that point. I had no idea what I was doing. The dating landscape completely changed. When I met her, we didn't have dating apps. So in 2014, that 11 months, I just absolutely floundered on the dating circuit. I was 50 pounds overweight. And I finally met a girl that was into kind of chubby guys, I guess. And of course, same mentality. This is the one. She's nice to me. I just went all in and ended up in a 4.5-year relationship with her. And what I found in that relationship was that I never learned my lesson from the marriage. And so in this relationship, a lot of the same patterns started emerging, right? And she ended up breaking up with me, right? And so in 2019, I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong here? Like, the 2 biggest relationships in my adult life have failed. I'm clearly doing something wrong. I'm out on the dating circuit again. I'm able to get dates now because in 2016, I lost all that weight and got into shape. And so now it's easy to get dates, but I can't keep chicks around longer than like 2 or 3 dates. Like, chicks ghost me. They don't want anything to do with me. I'm clearly doing something wrong. Like, I'm the common denominator here. So that led me on this path to understand attraction, intersexual dynamics. And that landed me in a men's group in 2020 called the 3% Man Group, where we were all studying intersexual dynamics. So I started my podcast out of that men's group. And the initial concept was I was just interviewing the guys in the group. And it was just a podcast for guys in that group. There was about 1,000 guys in there at the time. And I was just asking them, hey, man, how'd you end up here? How did you find this space? What's your story? And a lot of guys all had the same thing, just striking out with women, not understanding what's going on, coming out of breakups, not understanding why she broke up with them. And then after that, it just sort of grew out of the group, and I started interviewing bigger names in the space and stuff like that. So you asked me how the journey's been. It's been wild. It's been absolutely wild. That first year in 2020, it was an audio only podcast. 2021, I put it on YouTube, started making it video. I started interviewing some bigger names in the space. I set some clear goals to talk to some big authors, and I was able to start networking more. And then I eventually got involved with this group of guys in the red pill content space, like Rollo Tomasi. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Rich Cooper, bunch of other names in that space, and eventually started networking with them so much that they invited me onto a weekend panel show every Saturday in 2022 is when they finally invited me on that show. And so it's been wild. And then I also written 2 books since then and started a coaching practice out of all of that kind of stuff, just wanting to help men more.
It's funny how we always end up at such a full circle moment, from being a king of the hill, being a ladies' man, or just like crushing it, to the fall off of breakups, heartbreak, relationships ending, and then going back to being king of the hill again, all in different senses, but we still make it back on top of the hill. And I think that you're right. A lot of men do have that sniper mentality. When you hyper focus or put too much pressure on like any one thing, the thing's bound to break. You know, everybody has a limit, especially that young age where, I mean, 20 years old. I've said this to all my friends. I've said this to the other bachelors and bachelorettes inside the fam, that honestly, I was like, getting married before 30 is just wild to me, simply because you don't know who the hell you are. And you think that you know somebody else well enough to get married. We just haven't lived enough. I've had a lot of people laugh at the advice, and then 5 years later, same boat as you know, filing for their first divorce, or, you know, having kids, and the relationship's not there anymore. But some lessons you just have to live through in order to learn. No matter how many times people tell you how the message is delivered, you gotta be a dumpster fire. And then after a while you burn out, and then you might find some gems in there. But
well, you know it's interesting you say that, because we have this saying in this space, and I think Rollo Tomasi is the one that coined it, but he says red pill is triage. You know, you save the ones you can, read the last rites to the dying, because a lot of guys who come to the space and they understand this stuff and they start learning how attraction works, how the female brain works, and how to use that to our advantage and have healthy relationships. They want to tell everybody, I got to spread this gospel, you know, I got to save everybody's relationship. And the thing is that most people won't come to the space until they've been absolutely burned and become a dumpster fire. And then they have to realize for themselves, like, I'm doing something wrong. What's going on? And they have to want that information. Otherwise, you go give it to them unsolicited, they'll disregard it completely. It's really unfortunate. But once you sort of embrace that and go, okay, well, I'll help guys who want to be helped, and that's all I can do, and accept, ends up giving you a little bit of peace of mind.
it really does. I mean, because you're like, how many times can you watch somebody beat their head against the wall? Listen, if you don't want to go to the water, I can't lead you there. So I'm gonna hang out here by the water whenever you're.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when what do they say in Star Wars? When the student is ready, the master shall appear, or something. It's like, well, same thing. It's like you just hang out and wait for them, and then they'll be like, "Dude, what am I doing wrong?" You're like, "Finally, let me show you the ways of the dark side." Yeah.
I think prime example of that is my best friend. Don't get me wrong. I was in the same boat as you. I have no problem talking to women. I love doing it. I don't have to know them. I can see them, point them out. Let's go. We'll strike up a conversation. And he was kind of right there with me, but he wasn't a finisher. Didn't know how to close. And, or if you did close, he would just fumble like on the 1 yard line. I was like, we need to go back to the fundamentals here, because you're in the right spot, but you're just not bleeding catches or making it there. And I think that's what a lot of guys are missing is, they're like, well, I do so good, or they just don't understand why they're failing. 9 times out of 10, what I see, it's the fundamentals. I was like, you don't really know what you want. I say, if you can't tell me 2 reasons you're attracted to somebody, you probably just think they're hot. That's honestly what it is. And if that's where you're at, I was like, you're gonna fumble each and every time, because there's no substance there. Also, especially for my younger audience, I love the space that I work in now. Most of our audience is in that 20 to 25 range, 25. And I love it. I was like, you're fresh out of college and you think you're on top of the world. So I love not knocking them down a peg, but like really just opening their eyes to be like, dude, it was so easy back when you didn't have to worry about anything besides going to class and like meeting somebody at a bar or like at a football game. Because once you introduce your real life, having a job into the mix, paying bills, the same finesses that you had, they don't translate. And so you have to, it's a whole different tool set you have to learn how to build.
Yeah. One thing I see guys do incorrectly, I would say incorrectly, is that they treat women that they don't like a certain way, almost with indifference, or they just treat them like human beings. And then the hot women that they're really attracted to, they put them up on pedestals. They sort of simp for these girls. They treat them a completely different way. But if you treat all women the same, you treat the hot ones the same way you treat the ugly ones, you'll find that the hot ones respond better to that because you're acting differently than every other guy out there. Every other guy out there is putting the hot ones on pedestals, and they've got no shortage of simps telling them how beautiful they are. But if you just treat them like a human being, they're like, wait a second, this guy's a little bit different. This guy, he's not treating me like all these other guys. What's up with him? And that sets you apart from 97% of the other guys out there. But most guys don't want to do that because, they have these blinders on. And just like you said, they can't tell you 2 reasons why they like this girl because it's all just physical attraction. And we're wired for that. It's natural. Like, we're wired to want to, get girls in bed, especially the hot ones. Like, the hotter, the better. But you're going to start treating them a different way, and that's actually going to repel them. So treating them more like human beings, fascinating enough, actually works better for most of these guys. And then you said that your one friend wasn't a closer. And that's a big thing too, because a lot of guys have a fear of rejection. And if you close, you're risking some kind of rejection of some kind. So the biggest thing guys can do is learn to get over rejection quickly and not even let it phase them. But most people won't let themselves get to that point. So one of the things I teach guys is this concept I learned from a guy named Dr. Robert Glover, but it's called the 3 T's. T's, touch and tell, that boosts their attraction to you. And then the other thing is the 3 tests of interest, which is test of interest 1 is really just strike up a conversation. It could be about anything. You could be in the supermarket, she's in the cereal aisle, and you just walk up and say, hey, you can never go wrong with Captain Crunch or something, right? And then if she is interested in continuing that conversation, she'll continue that conversation with you. That naturally leads into level 2. If she's not interested, okay, cool. Well, she wasn't interested. You move on about your day. But level 2 is where you actually get into a real conversation. And that's where most guys quit. Everything's going great, so they don't want to ruin things by asking for a number or asking for a date. So they just end things right there. The thing is that most men will quit testing for interest before a woman starts losing interest. So women get really frustrated by that because they're like, this guy's so cool. He's bold. He walked up and talked to me. Like, I want him to ask me for my number, but women won't never tell you that. They want you to just get it. Yeah. So, but most guys will quit because they're afraid of rejection. So you have to move to that level 3, which requires something of her. So, hey, you know what? You seem like a cool chick. We should get together sometime. Give me your number, right? And hand her your phone. Like, that's a close for a number. That's pretty simple. She can either say yes or no to that. But by that point, if she hasn't mentioned a boyfriend or anything like that, you're probably going to get that number. Or you could set a date on the spot, right? Like, hey, you know what? My friends and I were going to this one club tonight. It'd be really cool if you can be there. Would you be interested? That would be a close for a date right on the spot. But most guys won't get there. That level 3 testing is something that a lot of guys are scared of, and it's all just because they're scared of rejection.
No, I completely understand that. And I think it's funny you brought up the 3 T's because we also have a different set of 3 T's that we talk about. I think you've talked about this before too, that communication is super important, but it's not the end all and be all in a relationship because men and women communicate on 2 different playing fields. And our 3 T's kind of help bridge that gap. They are, turf, time, and tone.
Yeah. Go on about those.
So a lot of times people think the conversation has to happen right there. As soon as I feel it, I have to say something. 90% of the time, that's not how that should boil down. You're either too passionate, I'm too passionate. That's a wildfire waiting to happen. So timing is super important. Or I see you're stressed. Let me not add to it. Turf, where are you having these conversations? Some conversations you shouldn't be having in the bedroom because only one thing happens, or, your mind's like super distracted. Walking into like a family dinner, definitely not the time for serious conversation. Let's do it after, let's do it before. Certain things like that. And then you get the tone. How am I approaching this conversation? You have to be aware, and this takes a lot of self-reflection to be like, am I naturally just dry and abrasive to people? Sometimes do I seem needy? All those things you have to think about when you're about to engage in a conversation. You don't want to give pick me energy. You know, that's not really cute on a guy. No woman's like, oh, he's just so adorable, and then wants them. So those 3 T's are crucial whenever you're trying to have a serious conversation or you're trying to resolve an issue. I feel like in our relationships.
Oh no, that's actually good. Yeah, and the tone part is so important because men and women communicate differently. Because men, we pay attention to words more. What are they saying? What are the words coming out of their mouth? Women don't pay attention to that half the time. They're paying attention to the tone and your body language. How are you making them feel? How do they feel about what you're saying and how you're saying it? So that's why when guys are, they're emotionally pissed off in a situation and they're trying to explain to her what's going on, she's not listening to any of that. She's watching it, how your body language is, and she's getting up in her feels about it. And then she's like, I don't like your tone. It's like it completely negates everything you said. But that's just because men and women communicate differently. Yeah, my 3 T's are a little bit different. It's tease, touch, and tell. And they're things that you do when you're in the dating process, but also while you're in a long-term relationship. And those build what I like to call heat, right? Healthy emotional anticipation and tension. All that kind of stuff builds attraction, right? So teasing a girl, that's just playfully bantering, poking a little fun at her now and then, treating her like a bratty little sister. That stuff, women actually respond very well to that. Touch is just physical touch, right? Touching her, if you're in a restaurant and you grab her lower back and sort of lead her, through a doorway, or you grab her hand and lead her through a crowded restaurant, that's touch, right? It's not inappropriate touching. It's very, non-threatening touching, but that breaking that touch barrier builds attraction. That's a part of Kino escalation. And then tell is, instead of asking a girl what she wants to do, you tell her what you're going to do. So telling her to do different things. And the funny thing is a lot of guys are like, what? I can't just go tell a woman what to do. They actually really like it. It's very assertive. It's very decisive. It's very bold. And so instead of asking a woman on a date, I would say, hey, you sound like a cool chick. When are you free to get together? And, they might tell me a couple days. I say, okay, cool. Thursday, meet me at this place at that time. Right? It's a definite time, definite plan, definite date. And I'm telling them, hey, meet me here. And ever since I started doing that, I got way more yeses. Oh yeah, sounds great. Because women love being told what to do. It's fascinating.
That's something I learned a while ago. I was like, I stopped asking questions. I only make statements.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you can't deny a statement. It's something I made. It's a fact. So I do love that. And I do advise a lot of other people that too, is make the plan. Dating isn't like tennis. You don't need to go back and forth. Dude, I'm trying to get a strikeout. If you're trying to throw that thing as hard as you can into the pitcher's glove, get it out of there. Okay. Mm-hmm. You see her, you get the number, you get the Instagram or like whatever, you slide into the DM. However you start that conversation, it's brief. You set something up and then you follow through. You just keep repeating that process. Because then you're in front of her. And that goes back to that second level that you were talking about, is some people, they're like, okay, I got the date. They get there and they think the work's done. But you're right. Women are always testing the temperature to see how far you're invested into them, your level of interest. What are you really looking for? But you think you caught the ball and that's it. So you're just like standing there looking around. I don't know what's going on. And I was like, no, you got to run now. And it's so funny how you see that's where most relationships fall off, is they're like, I just got bored. Because we live in a really ghosty age right now. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And as to your point earlier, it might not have been you personally while some of those relationships weren't working out. It might have been because I've done it myself. I caught the ball and I was just standing there. And they came and they sacked my ass. But because I wasn't following through, I wasn't showing that same level. I wasn't creating that same level of heat consistently. This is the thing guys do. We start really hot. And then we just burn off. We don't add any kindling to it. And I think that's what really takes you from maybe just a one-night stand to having a lasting relationship.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I see guys do, and I was guilty of it too, and this is what I realized when I was like, what am I doing wrong here? Why can't I keep girls around after 3 dates? It's because I was needy. I was super needy. I was trying to make every girl my girlfriend. I was trying to lock them down, right? Oh, so we've gone on 2 dates now. So what are we? Are we, we're exclusive now? I was bad, dude. I was so bad about that. And I didn't realize that through the psychology of attraction, through women's evolutionary psychology, that a guy pushing for a relationship, it's unattractive to them. It makes no sense to them. It doesn't compute because traditionally, for thousands of years, women are looking for men for protection and provisioning. So, and men are typically looking to mate with every girl they can find, right? So men are more polygamous, women are more hypergamous. They're looking for one guy to consolidate on. And so you got to let them do it. You got to be the one that's out there spinning plates, dating, trying to weigh your best options, and you got to let them try to lock you down. But most guys are trying to lock down every girl that they talk to, and it's unattractive behavior. It's one of the biggest things that'll get you ghosted is if you're texting her all the time, you're overly available. There was a legend in the space. His name was Alan Roger Curry. He wrote a book called Mode 1.
Yeah,
Have you read Mode 1?
I have. Yeah, it's on the bookshelf.
Okay, yeah. So I was lucky enough to interview Alan. I was the last person to interview him before he passed away. I read that one, and I read Say It Again, his third book, right? Phenomenal books. I highly recommend them. But one of the things that he pointed out in his books is that women look at guys who give away their time and attention the same way guys look at girls that give away sex too easily. They look at us like we're too easy, and it's unattractive to them, and they don't want anything to do with it. So one of the things I learned through Corey Wayne and other prominent people in the space is that women really are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. Like they really like a guy that's a little bit of a mystery that they have to figure out. They want to figure you out using nothing but their feminine intuition. And if you give too much away, it's like giving away a spoiler to the end of a movie. Like they don't want the spoiler. They want to figure it out. And so you've got to give that to them. And I think that's two biggest things that guys are doing wrong, right? They're overly available and too needy, and they're giving away the ending of the story, and they're not being a mystery enough.
No, I completely agree with that because that's something that goes both ways. You don't want to be too needy as a guy, but you also don't want a woman who's too needy because they can be a try hard, and it's not appealing. I was like, it's like if you build it, they will come. Like you just have to. I tell people that like what's meant for you is meant for you. Like just keep doing you. Don't try to put on a facade or get too eager. I was like, at the line, like you'll get on. There's room for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then another thing that I tell people when it comes to dating and spinning plates is the guys that get that sniper mentality, one of the biggest drawbacks to that is they're so focused on this girl, they got blinders on. They don't see all the other girls around them showing high interest. And they start overlooking red flags in the girl they're focusing on because they're so in it to win it with that girl. She might have bad habits. She might act terribly in certain situations, but they're like, I can fix her. I can overlook that. Like things will be okay once we're in a relationship. But the thing is, like, she's not the one, bro. She's not the one. But your blinders are on so much that you can't see all the other girls that are better options for you. So that's why I highly recommend guys not get so into that sniper mentality and actually play the field a little bit. Go out and date lots of different girls. You don't have to sleep with all of them. A lot of guys are afraid of that. You're not cheating on any of them because you've never had this exclusive talk yet. But a lot of guys feel like I'm cheating if I start talking to other girls. Like you've never had that conversation with her. That's not true. And I guarantee she's doing that because women, like we call it spinning plates. Women just call it dating. Like that's how women naturally date. They're weighing their best options. You need to be doing the same thing. But most guys don't do that.
Yeah, the two things that I really want to touch on regarding that point is that I almost dropped the ball right there. The two things that I wanted to touch on that is you're right. You don't have that exclusive conversation. And I like to let everybody know there is a distinction between dating somebody and going on dates. You can go on dates with multiple different people. Now, it gets a little techy when you start dating multiple people. That's a completely different thing. You're right. Feeling people out, just getting to know them. That's what I quantify as dating. There's those surface level interactions where you're just getting to gauge interest in people, compatibility. Whereas dating, that's when you have that emotional investment that you're giving to somebody. That's why people start to feel guilty or shameful. Once you start to feel like you're dating somebody, that might be an okay time to have the define the relationship conversation when you both feel like you've invested physically and emotionally into each other. But until then, keep going, because you're right. When you hone in, you could miss an open lane right here on your right side because you're so focused on like the car in front of you. You gotta take your gap.
Yeah. Well, and then when it comes to that conversation, I highly recommend waiting till she brings it up.
100%. And there are always subtle things we can do to kind of cue that conversation. Honestly, a time that I usually have that conversation or I start to parse it up is, so guys, we're recording this going at the start of November. So we were going into that holiday season. So holidays is a big family time. I don't just invite anybody to meet the fam. That's usually reserved for somebody I'm dating. So this is a lot of great opportunities that will sprinkle in if you're thinking that, hey, it's time to take it to the next level around here. Whether they're thinking about going home, you live close to each other, opportunities to have that conversation or to cue that conversation up.
Yeah. Yeah. What I found, and it's almost like clockwork, is that when you're out spinning plates and you've been seeing a girl for a while, by the 7th or 8th date on average, and typically in the early stages, you're probably only seeing her once a week, and that I highly recommend keeping it to once a week, because a lot of guys try to fill up a girl's calendar every week. Don't do that in the early stages. That kind of stuff is reserved for girls that you're exclusive with, I would say. But in the early stages, once a week's fine. So by the 7th or 8th date, it's been 8 weeks out. It's almost 2 months at this point that you've been seeing her. Women really do start developing those feelings by that point if they want to be in a relationship. And Breitholt's law basically says that it's the woman, not the man, that determines the status of a relationship, right? If she doesn't see any value from you, there's no relationship's ever going to take place. So if she starts seeing a lot of your value by the 8th date, she's going to bring it up, and that's her job. That's her job. So you got to let her bring it up and don't assume anything. That's what I personally recommend. I found guys have a lot more success if they just casually, go on dates, like you said, go on dates until a girl brings it up. If the girl that brings it up isn't the girl that you really want to be in a relationship with, well, you got to be honest with her. You don't have to, you're not obligated to be in relationships with people you don't want to be in relationships with. So you got to tell her, well, I kind of like how things are. I like how keeping things casual. And you got to be okay with her saying, well, I'm leaving. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. I've had a good time with you. But you got to be able to let these girls go. A lot of guys are afraid to let these girls go. And so they end up in relationships. They agree to relationships that they never really wanted to be in the first place, but they're being nice guys. It's like, no, it's okay. It's okay to let them go. If you're not feeling it, that's fine. And you're waiting for one of these other girls that you're seeing to bring it up, just keep spinning those plates and keep adding girls on until the right girls, the cream is going to rise to the top.
Yeah.
No,
but
you got to be patient with it. But guys hate dating so much that they're quick to jump into a relationship just so they don't have to go out on the dating circuit anymore. And then once they get exclusive, they think they've reached the finish line. They don't have to try anymore, which is what you're talking about, how guys are hot heavy at the beginning and then they let things fall off. That's because they think that they reached the finish line. There's no finish line. The work never stops.
No. And I would dare take what you said a step further. I don't think guys necessarily hate dating. I think they are afraid that they're not going to get another opportunity. And so they're like, all right, I know this. I have this in my hands. It's tangible. I'm just going to stick with this. When you live in that fear-based mentality, right, you're not getting a quality product. Like when people start panicking for the apocalypse or and they're buying all the toilet paper, they're buying all the groceries. Like, what are you going to do with all this toilet paper? Like, you can only wipe so much. Don't go into that panic mode and just grab it just because it's there to grab. Mm-hmm. I was like, you're right, keep spinning those plates. And eventually they'll start to fall off when they're not right. And then when you end up with that one or two, alrighty, now all right, that's when it's time to lock in. I was like, that's when it's okay. I feel like more okay to be a sniper. Is like, hey, I got these two options, two targets right here, proving themselves. Let's commit. Here's the one we're going for. But until then, you have to keep your eyes wide open.
I think a big thing too that gets guys discouraged on the dating process is if they are spinning plates and they start getting, 2 or 3, 4 girls in the rotation, and then they all the plates fall off at once and they got to start from scratch. Oh man, a lot of that is a kick in the nads for a lot of guys. Yeah.
I definitely think,
But it happens to everybody. It happens to the best of us.
yeah.
It's just one of those things where it's like you have to realize if you've done it once, you can do it again. It's no big deal. There's always another woman. There's 4 billion women on the planet. You got plenty to choose from. You're going to be fine. You're going to be all right.
And that's where you can turn it into skill. Because if anything happens once, you can attribute that to luck. But like you said, if you've done it once, you can do it again. Treat this as a skill that you are adding to your repertoire, is your charisma, your likability. Dating is a skill. Okay. Not everybody's good at it. You just have to work at it. And you're right. Even though you're starting over from scratch, I mean, sometimes that's a good thing. So like we were talking about, you're the king of the hill when you have 3, 4, 5 plates going at once. When they drop off, okay, you took a little fall. Get up, dust it off, get back on top of the hill. It's that simple. I mean, there's some nuances in there, but that's the goal, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic too, because that kind of stuff gets really discouraging for a lot of guys. They want to quit, they want to give up, they want to go MGTOW. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's like, man, it is absolutely a skill, and it's something that you have to practice. One thing that really changed my mindset, because I also think that it's healthy for guys to sort of be lovingly detached, especially in the early stages of dating, but it's really good to be somewhat lovingly detached even in a long-term relationship, because if you let your emotions get the best of you, you start being controlled by them. But if you could take a step back and look at the situation, keep an eye on her attraction level, you can make more rational decisions. Most guys don't do that. And so one of the things that helped me do that was I started treating dating like a science experiment. Okay, what works, what doesn't? And one thing that I started doing, and I recommend for every guy to do, because like you said, we were the ones that are supposed to be making the plans. We're the ones that are, supposed to have an idea in mind, not go back and forth. And what do you like to do? Well, what what would you rather do? If you have a go-to place for every first date and you keep it low investment, like drinks only, you don't have to do any thinking. You're running the same playbook for every date, right? So you meet a girl on a dating app, you meet a girl in the supermarket, whatever, however you're sourcing women. There's various ways to meet women. However you're doing it, you ask them when they're free, and then when they tell you, you say, "Great, meet me at this place at this time." It's always the same place. It's every time. And when you go there, all you're doing is gauging her interest level, practicing body language. You're letting her do 80% of the talking, all the kind of stuff that you're going to do on every single date. You're going to keep doing it on every single date, and then write what works and what doesn't, right? Just keep a note of it. I used to do in that men's group that I came out of, we used to do video updates on how the date went. Yeah. And so that kind of thing allows you to contemplate, okay, what works, what doesn't, what should I do better next time? How did she react when I did X, Y, and Z? And then on the next date, you'll do better. You'll keep getting better at it. And the thing is like, you've been on that date, eventually you'll get to a point where you've been on that date 100 times. She's the only one on that first date. You've done it 100 times by now. You know the playbook, and it's going to be more like clockwork. You're going to start getting more girls in your rotation. It's just like a sales funnel, it's at that point, but it's efficient and it works.
Yeah. So I forgot to ask this when you were telling your story earlier. Are you currently seeing somebody?
I am in a relationship. I've been with, I call her on my podcast Nurse Chick. I like to keep her anonymous because there's a lot of creeps out there. But yeah, I've been with the same gal for going on 4 years now. And it's been absolutely effortless because I did that. I wasn't ready to settle down with just any old girl. I took my time. I spun lots of plates. I had all the plates fall off a couple times and built them back up. And I just really enjoyed the process. I really tried to get to a point where this was fun for me. It was fun being a single guy. I didn't want to be locked down. But Nurse Chick just showed so much interest and so much investment that she made herself undeniable and hard to ignore. And so when she wanted to pull that trigger and she brought up locking me down, the way she did it, because I'm a pro wrestling fan, as you can see in the background here.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite wrestlers is Kenny Omega, and Kenny Omega has this signature move called the V trigger, which is like a running knee kick to the face. She got a picture of Kenny Omega knee kicking a guy in the face, and she had it turned into a card that says, "Will you be my signature move?" And I was like, how can you say no to that?
Yeah, that's good.
That's genius. Yeah. And and so she's in the other room right now while I'm doing the podcast, but she's just a phenomenal woman. But I allowed myself to not settle and, let the cream rise to the top.
Kudos, shout out to you. That's the goal of everybody watching right now, is to find that person where you're like, how can I say no to him? Or like, hell yeah, I'm trying to beat somebody's signature move,
Yeah.
I think that's, honestly, after this, you got to tell her Josh said that was a great move. So normally we have a section called the quickie questions, and I'm going to do a little riff off those, because I think this is the first time I've really had another guy on who is in the same space as me. So I really want to give the opportunity to ask some questions that I think would help a lot of my male audience kind of go out there and start spinning plates a little more successfully.
Okay. Yeah.
And one of the big ones is red flags. What do you think are a lot of red flags that people miss when they're in that early dating stage?
I love talking about red flags because they're honestly, a lot of them are subjective. They're very subjective. So I might give you a list of like top 20 red flags, and they might be like women with tattoos and women with septum piercings and stuff. But those are red flags. Well, actually, I love girls with tattoos. I don't care, but those septum piercings, that's a hard pass for me. But that stuff is like surface level. Some guys are into that. Like, I'm not going to tell you that's a red flag. What I like to tell guys to do is figure out what you want, right? Really sit down, grab a piece of paper, write out a list of the top like 20 qualities in a woman that you absolutely want in a relationship, right? And it can be some of that physical stuff, like, okay, no tattoos. So what I like to say when you're writing what you want, don't write what you don't want, right? Write what you want, right? In a positive.
Wow, that's good.
Right. So instead of a girl with no tattoos, you would put, she has beautiful, clear skin, right? She has this kind of hair. Whatever, that kind of physical stuff is great. What really makes a woman great in a relationship is her personality, her demeanor, how she shows up. Is she a woman that likes to argue? Is she petty? Does she talk about a lot of shit about her exes? Like all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is going to tell you that when things go bad, she's going to do all that kind of stuff to you too, right? So you want a woman that, has good communication skills, a woman that does what she says she's going to do, right? She's congruent, a woman that's loving and nurturing. She supports your mission, right? Stuff like that. I like to put those out. Those are just examples. You really have to figure out what you want. And then usually what you don't want are complete opposites of those. And those opposites are what you don't want. So I like to split a piece of paper, what I want, what I don't want. And the thing is I'm a big law of attraction guy. We get what we focus on in life. So if you want a girl with all the qualities you want, you really want to focus on that list. And if you do that, you're going to start seeing more girls with those types of qualities. But having a general understanding of what you don't want is good too, because as soon as you start seeing that stuff show up, those are your red and yellow flags. Those are things that you're like, oh, I won't tolerate a girl like this. So that's how you know I need to end things quickly. Like this isn't going to work out. So that's how I like to come up with red flags, is really sitting down and figuring out what you want. And then usually the opposite of that will give you your red flags and yellow flags list. I mean, dude, there's girls with, narcissistic personality disorders out there, like certain things that they're doing, it will start showing up. Girls that like to have mental breakdowns and like light you up in public, like all that kind of stuff is red flag behavior. Girls that just have no idea of respect, that kind of stuff are things that you just won't tolerate. All that kind of stuff, I think, are huge red flags.
And that's usually what I try to lead more into is physically. I don't think there are very many red flags. I think you're right. It's more the personality. It's more the behavior that sets off trigger warnings for me, because we're human. We fluctuate from, size up and down, or being covered in ink, being covered in holes to not. So I really do like to focus on those personality traits as well. Now, I was in a car the other day and my Uber driver said this to me. Like, she was joking around, but she said in herself, she's like in her 50s, 60s, but she was like, She's like, after I'm dropping you off, I'm going to go see my honey, you know. I was like, oh, how long you guys been together? She's like, this is just my Monday. And there's nothing wrong with that. I was like, get it. But she was like, yeah, I needed my hair done and my nails done. And I was like, wait, if this is just your Monday, why do you think that he's going to pay to get your hair and nails done and then a different guy's going to pay for X, Y, and Z? And I think this is a pitfall that some guys fall into is there's a difference between being a provider and then just being a wallet for somebody. And that's what gets you into trouble. I'm not going to pay for each and everything, but when you're with me and you are my person, you will be provided for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think a lot of guys lead with their wallet, and that's a big thing because a lot of guys have this idea that women only want you for your money. Well, they only want you for your money if that's all you have to offer. So if you're that guy that's like flying girls out to Miami, or you're paying for lavish dates for a first date, women are happy to take advantage of guys like that. That's why I recommend first dates be low investment, drinks only. I do recommend that men pay for the first date because I'm like, you're asking her, she's your guest. That's setting the tone and leading. That's fine. But 1 or 2 drinks is not going to break the bank. And if that's breaking the bank for you, I think you have other problems that you need to work on. But still, like if you're doing lavish steak dinners for every date, that's going to add up quickly, and that's going to be completely unsustainable. And women are happy to let guys do that for them. Keeping things low investment will sort of weed out girls that are using you for your money, because a girl who scoffs at drinks only, she's not it. Okay, cool. Well, this just isn't going to work out then, right? That's going to weed out those girls. And then girls that are more than happy to go on a low investment date, now you can really start testing for her interest level, and it's going to give you a better idea of who you're dealing with, and it's going to weed out the garbage. But yeah, there's plenty of women like that out there that they have like 7 different dudes, 7 days of the week, paying for 7 different things. They don't have to pay for anything, and they're happy to use these guys. And there's a multitude of simps out there that are happy to pay for these women, thinking, okay, if I just get her pay for her nails and stuff like that, she's going to put out. Like a lot of these chicks don't even put out. They just use these guys. Yeah.
And just like following that up sets a bad tone, because if this is the tone that you're leading with, and for someone to end up landing this person, that's going to be what she expects for the entire relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this video the other day, and I thought it was wild that we've reached this point in life. A girl had said a guy had broken up with her, and he had like put her into a nicer apartment. He was like taking care of all the bills and stuff. And then they broke up, and then he was like, all right, well, you can't stay in my apartment anymore. So she's like, okay, so when are you getting my own apartment? She's like, you elevated me to this class. Now it's your responsibility to maintain it. That is one of the most outlandish things I've ever heard in my entire life.
Well, honestly, that's how the court system for family court is designed. It's designed, if you're a man and you raise a woman's status to a certain accustomed level, you are required to keep her at that level. That's the thing is about men. We don't care about what a woman makes, right? We could be multimillionaires. We'll date the girl at the coffee shop. We don't care what she does for a living. But the problem is when you have such a massive pay gap, once you raise her up to that level, society is going to make sure you keep her at that level, which is a dangerous proposition for men. So if that's how you typically lead in the dating environment, you got to change that strategy. It's a bad strategy.
Especially in this current economy, a lot of people are renting, and rent's getting outrageous. So like I said, lead with your wallet, but can you really afford to double up on your current life?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something you really have to ask. If a lot of people have like financial dom kink, sure, that's cool. Just make sure it's manageable, because you don't want to break the bank zeroing out for dates.
A lot of guys don't understand this. I mentioned it earlier. Women are hypergamous by nature. And a lot of guys that gravitate to this space, they hear that term hypergamy, they think it's this dirty thing. It's not. It's just women's sexual strategy. So if you understand how it works, you can use it to your advantage. You can break it down very simply, right? There's the alpha seed, beta need, sides of hypergamy. Women want a guy that can provide that alpha dopamine, that gets them excited and attracted, and they want to mate with this guy. But they also want a guy that's a good provider, that can, provide for her children, be a good protector. So if you're leading with your wallet, you're actually leading with the beta side of hypergamy. And the beta side of her hypergamy doesn't make her sexually attracted to you. So if your goal is to get with a girl that's, rocks your world in bed and stuff like that, and you don't want her just using you for your money, you have to optimize on the alpha traits. And none of those have anything to do with money. That's all frame and game, right? And sometimes your physical attraction. So if you're going to the gym and you're in good shape, you're optimizing your alpha traits. If you're a guy that works on your mental frame, you're not controlled by your emotions. Those are alpha traits. If you're a guy that's a smooth talker that can, whisper sweet nothings in her ear and get her pussy wet, those are alpha traits, right? But your money, that's all beta side of hypergamy. And I recommend to guys to really try to develop an 80-20 split, right? 80% alpha traits, 20% beta traits, because if you don't want to end up in a dead bedroom, you gotta optimize those alpha traits and sprinkle a little beta on it. It doesn't work the other way around. You can't be like optimized on the beta traits and try to sprinkle a little alpha. It doesn't work.
I completely get that. Men, we're supposed to be steak and potato guys, but when you have too much beta, it's like a salad with a little bit of steak on it. Nobody wants that. Get that out of here.
Right.
You're right. You have to lead with that personality. You have to lead with that dominant nature. Now, for those people who are struggling to find that bit of confidence to really be the leader that they should be and start to run their relationships instead of letting their relationships run them, what do you kind of suggest?
Well, that's really one of those things where you have to do the work and do the practice. One of the hardest thing for guys, honestly, is their frame, like working on their mental frame, not letting their emotions get the best of them in certain situations, being more assertive, being more decisive. All that kind of stuff are things that are paramount. A lot of guys go heavy on the gym stuff, like, okay, I'm just going to hit the gym, I'm going to work out, I'm going to work on my physical attractiveness, and they still don't know how to talk to girls, right? There's a whole subgroup of people called gym cells out there because they're jacked, they look great, but they don't know how to talk to girls, and so they're lonely, right?
Yeah.
But so it's like, okay, yeah, muscles are awesome, but that's not the most important thing. I've mentioned his name before, but Rollo Tomasi has these 9 iron rules, right? These 9 iron rules of Tomasi. Iron rule number 1 is frame is everything. So I like to tell guys, work on your frame, work on your emotional control, work on how you talk to women. A big thing that guys are terrible with is what's called deering, right? Where if they get in an argument with a girl, if you learn what I teach guys when it comes to communication with women, you never get in an argument with her. She gets mad at you for whatever. A lot of guys do what's called deering: defend, excuse, explain, rationalize, right? So they want to explain to her why they're doing what they're doing, why they don't do what they're doing, whatever. You don't need to explain anything. If you're the leader in the relationship, if you want to use that hypergamy to your advantage, she's got to see you as higher valued than her. And if you have to explain to her anything, you're at a lower position. Like the king doesn't have to explain anything to the subjects, right? So don't defend yourself. Don't excuse what you're doing. Don't explain. Don't rationalize. Another thing that guys tend to do is they get overly emotional, right? She gets mad at you. She does some kind of shit test to you. They emotionally react. They get mad. They yell back. They blast back. You don't need to do any of that, right? A lot of times when a woman is sometimes being disrespectful to you, there's different ways to handle it. If you don't know how to control those emotions, the best thing to do is say nothing and walk away. Like remove your time and attention from her. Time and attention is the currency of the realm in girl world. And so that's the easiest way to enforce a boundary is be like, I'm not doing this, and then leave, right? Let her find her own way home, whatever. Once you get into more of an exclusive relationship, there's better ways of handling that. I like to talk about what's called Luca. I learned this from my good friend, Paul Benjamin of the Apex Mindset YouTube channel. But he came up with this concept called Luca, which is listen, understand, clarity, action. And that's where you can lead a conversation from a position of authority. You don't have to explain what you're doing. You don't have to defend yourself. You just listen where she's coming from, right? Listen, understand where she's coming from. If you don't quite understand, you ask clarifying question. That's where the LUC right? Listen, understand, clarity. You ask clarifying questions like, okay, let me get this straight. I did this. This makes you feel this way. Do I have that right? Okay. And then once you get to a position where she's got everything off her chest, she feels heard and understood, you as the authority come up with an action plan. Okay, well, going forward, this is what we're going to do, right? Sometimes when your girl's blasting you for something, she's got a point. Sometimes you're messing up. So if that's the case, like, you don't have to apologize, you don't have to explain yourself, just go, okay, well, I can understand where you're coming from with that. So here's what I'm going to do going forward, right? So all of this is validating her feelings. And that's really all women want, right? They want to feel heard and understood. They want their feelings validated. You're communicating from a position of authority. If you're doing all that, that's when the legs open. She's going to feel a tremendous weight off her chest. Most women don't even want a solution in the first place. They don't want you to fix the problem. They just want to feel heard and understood. So if you make them feel heard and understood, everything's kosher, So there's all these different things that you could do to optimize those alpha traits in a relationship that will keep things flowing naturally and make her relax into her feminine energy. And that's really what women want at the end of the day,
No, I agree. And that talks about something I mentioned earlier with our 3 T's. That's 2 of the major ones right there, is time and tone.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting blasted like that, you're right. Sometimes saying nothing is the right tone. The right timing is, all right, you're done. Then you've also had time to analytically process this, ask those questions so that she does feel heard. That's when she takes your hand and leads you to the bedroom because she's feeling more fulfilled. She's in that feminine energy, which is something that a lot of beta males don't understand. You're right. They just want to apologize, or they think that they have to do this drastic change in order to get that result. Did you really listen to what was said? Because you're right. Sometimes it's not, hey, I want things to change. It's, I needed to get my point out. Or did you think about this from my viewpoint? And if you do take time to be like, hey, I understand where you're coming from. That's why we started the show, is to be like, men, we are not right 100% of the time. I was like, I know in our heads we are, but we fuck up too. So if you could just own that, like, you know what, you're right. Just like you said, an action plan for a date with a woman, you need to set an action plan to hold yourself accountable. And when you hold yourself accountable, I guarantee whatever woman or whatever you're into is with, they will think you were that much more attractive because they're like, accountability, that's greater than money. Sometimes anybody can get money, but not everybody holds themselves accountable. So
yeah, a big thing with that too is that it develops respect, right? You can't. A lot of guys ask me, well, how do you make a girl respect you? You can't make anyone respect you. You have to respect is earned, right? So if you act in a way where she respects you because of the way you carry yourself, that's how you do that. And women can't love a man they don't respect. So if you aren't acting in a way that deserves respect, she's not going to respect you. She's not going to love you. And you're going to either lead to a breakup and a divorce or, to a dead bedroom. It's all those types of things. As men, we have the burden of performance to keep our head on a swivel all the time and always stay cognizant of this stuff and not fall in complacency. A lot of guys don't want to do that. A lot of guys are inherently lazy. A lot of those guys end up in MGTOW forums. And they talk about how the juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's like, well, I don't know about you, man, but I actually like having healthy relationships. I like having a girl around. They smell nice.
yeah,
To me, the juice absolutely is worth the squeeze. And honestly, when you make this a part of who you are, you develop a paradigm where this is how you interact with women. It's effortless. It's not a big effort to do this kind of stuff. It's just, it becomes a habit. It's habit-based. And 95% of our actions are habit-based anyway. So if you're not doing all this stuff, it's because you have bad relationship habits that you need to rewrite.
No, I agree. You're an author now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the book a little bit.
I've got 2 of them, actually. And so if a lot of your audience is in the dating space and they're younger, you said a lot of the guys are in their early 20s and stuff like that?
A lot of the clients I work with, yes. But I mean, the thing about the podcast, though, I love my bachelorettes out there, too. They're paying attention. It's a pretty wide berth for them.
Okay. Well, so my books are really geared towards men because I like working with men. I do think that it's sort of incumbent upon us to set the tone and lead in relationships. So I like to work with men. My first book is for the younger crowd, would probably be really good for this. It's called Everything I Wish I Knew When I Was 18.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, I mean, you don't have to be a young person. You can be 35 or older to read this stuff, because I didn't learn half this stuff until I was 35, right? But the biggest chapter in this book is on dating and spinning plates. And it really goes into depth on the psychology of attraction and how women operate and how to successfully spin those plates in a way that will lead you to a relationship, if that's what you want to do. If you don't, if you just want to be a permanent plate spinner for the rest of your life, no judgment. Like, do that. The book will help you with that too. It also goes through and teaches you how to get your finances in order, how to get out of debt, how to start building wealth, all that kind of stuff. And then after the dating and spinning plates, it shows you how to lead a healthy relationship to keep that attraction going for a long term. Because a lot of guys, they get into the relationships, they think they've reached the finish line, or they get into an exclusive relationship, they keep doing the attractive stuff, and then they marry the girl. Now they think they've reached the finish line. There's no finish line. You have all the stuff that you did in the beginning, you have to keep doing throughout the relationship, or the relationship's going to go stale. So that's the first book. I highly recommend that one. It's a bestseller right now. Actually, it's been a bestseller for a year now, so it's really good. And then this one I just released. It's called The Essential Skills of a Masculine Presence Psychology Paradigm. This one's a part of a larger series that myself and a bunch of other guys in the Red Pill podcast space are all putting together. I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Donovan Sharp. Donovan Sharp is getting ready to release his book in the series, but mine was the first one out, and it's all about your paradigms. It's all about the deep-seated subconscious habits that we have that cause us to lead unhealthy relationships and how to reprogram those. And so I talk about stuff that a lot of people aren't going to want to hear. They're not going to want to hear it. For example, one of the unhelpful paradigms that I talk about in the book is the idea that your girl's your best friend, right? A lot of guys are looking for their best friend. A lot of girls on dating apps will lead with, hey, I'm looking for my best friend. The problem, at least for men who are looking for a best friend in a loving, romantic relationship, is they start treating their girl like a friend. And when you start treating a girl like a friend, this is how you end up in the friend zone, right? This is why when you're out on the dating circuit, you're being overly friendly and you're not making bold moves. You're not going in for a kiss. You're not, touching her. You're not breaking the touch barrier. All those kinds of things basically tell her we're not friends, we're lovers, right? You do romantic things and you go in for kisses. You do all that kind of stuff. That's what lovers do. Your best friend, you're chummy. You want to do fun stuff and you hang out and you do, whatever, drinking with the boys. If you treat her that way, she's going to look at you like, well, I'm really interested in him, but all he does is act like a friend. He never makes a move. He doesn't do all this kind of stuff. I'm going to make him a friend. I'm going to treat him like a friend and put him in the friend zone. So guys put themselves in the friend zone. The thing is, once you get to a relationship, if you have that mentality of she's my best friend, you start treating your girl like your best friend. She puts you in the friend zone in your own relationship. That's where sex starts to dry up. That's where, she starts getting a headache every night. Everything starts getting boring for her. And next thing you know, guys are like, what? I thought, she has an obligation. She's my wife. She's supposed to do this. Yeah, but you have done nothing to spike those dopamine receptors of hers. That dopamine is what makes her sexually attracted to you. You've really optimized on the oxytocin, the comfort love stuff, the beta side of hypergamy. That's where the friendship stuff comes in. But you really got to keep seducing her, always be seducing her, right? So I talk about breaking that paradigm. Another one is the idea of equal partnership. She's my partner. Everyone nowadays, it's funny because back in the 90s, heterosexual relationships weren't described as partners. No, like you would ask someone, are you in a relationship? They're like, yeah, my wife, my girlfriend, my husband, my boyfriend. That's how people describe relationships. But now, because we're in more of a PC society, everyone describes the relationship as my partner now. It's fascinating to me because I'm like, I swear to God, 15 years ago, not everyone was using the word partner. Now everyone does. The problem with men, if you go into a relationship looking at her like she's your partner, like my equal partner, is you start deferring to her authority. You won't make decisions yourself. You won't be decisive. You won't be assertive. You've got to run everything by her because she's your equal partner. Well, the thing is that that's not using hypergamy to your advantage. She wants you to be the leader of the relationship. She wants you to be decisive. She wants you to be assertive. And so if you're constantly going to her going, is this okay with you? You're basically leaving those decisions up to her, which she doesn't want anyway. She starts building resentment because you're making her the man in the relationship and she never wanted the position to begin with. So having this idea of her being your partner is an unhealthy paradigm. What I prefer, guys, I think is more healthy paradigm is a captain executive officer type dynamic where you're the captain, what you say goes. However, you recognize that she is a smart person. She has great contributions. There's no reason not to take what she suggests under advisement. right? So you're not leading a relationship like a dictator. You're collaborating with her, but at the end of the day, what you say goes, right? That is more of a healthy relationship, and women actually like that relationship better. They find themselves when they're in a relationship like that they can relax more into their feminine. They don't have to make a lot of decisions. They trust you to lead more. That builds more respect. So that's more of a healthy paradigm. And the book is just full of stuff like that.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, we had a similar conversation to that last season with our guest Justin Groth, who he's like, I refer to my girlfriend, my wife, as a helpmate. Like, this is my unit. I'm running it. However, she's not just, just another person. I was like, her opinion has some weight to it, but ultimately, I was like, once again, as the man, I'm the leader. And I do like that kind of role in a relationship because we talked about this in that episode too. There's nothing wrong with roles. We live in such a PC society now where people like politically correct responses and terminology. But I was like, there is something to said about tradition because the fact that tradition means that it's lasted generations. It's been proven effective. And one of those things is, you're right, just men leading. Now, that's not to say that you're right, you're a dictator. You make each and every decision or you disregard everybody else's feelings, because that's also how you'll get a dead bedroom and a broken relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If your significant other doesn't feel significant, they just feel like they could be replaced. When they start feeling like a roommate or like they don't have now I'm using it, partner in the relationship, they become devoid, they become detached. And that's a huge downfall. So you're right. Having a leader, but also a great leader, everybody knows this, listens to their subordinates, their team.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I like to tell guys too. I'm like, think about it from your own perspective. If you were working for a boss who's like, it's my way or the highway, they completely disregard your contributions, you don't want to work for a guy like that. But a guy who is like, hey, this is where I see the company going, and you go, you know what, boss, we could do it better if we do it this way. And he goes, well, why don't you explain that? How does that work, right? And if you can tell him like, hey, this would be more efficient, this will save us more money, and he's like, damn, you're smart. Like let's go with your idea. That's great, right? If you would be more willing to do more stuff for a boss like that, because he's taking your contributions into consideration and running with them on occasion, But a boss that's a total dictator, you don't respect guys like that. In fact, you quit and go find a job where you have a little bit more people, like where they respect your contribution too. So there's no reason not to run your relationship the same way. But at the same time, like you can't constantly make her the one that's the decider in the relationship. So like in my personal relationship, I've been doing that from the jump, right? I make decisions. The best analogy ever is the dinner debate, right? Where do you want to eat for tonight? Oh, I don't know. Where do you want to eat? Well, how about Taco Bell? Oh, well, we ate there last time. I don't want to eat Taco Bell, right? That you can get rid of all of that. If you're as the guy, just don't even ask her. Just say, hey, we're getting steak tonight. Grab your shoes, right? 9 times out of 10, your girl's gonna go, okay, yeah, that sounds good. I'll go grab my shoes, right? 9 times out of 10. The one time she'll go, we had steak, a week ago. I don't want steak. Okay, well, do you have a better suggestion? If she does, there's no reason not to take her suggestion, right? But if she doesn't, go, okay, well, I'm going to go get steak. You're welcome to join me. Sort of in a playful manner. But I'll tell you why I've never gotten to that point. Ever since I started implementing that, every chick has just been like, oh, yeah, sounds good, because they don't want to make those decisions. So I've been doing that from the get-go with my girlfriend. And the thing is that we've developed this dynamic now where she knows I'm just going to make a plan. And so if she truly wants to do something, she'll make the plan. She'll just go, we're doing this tonight. And I'll be like, great. We've never had that argument, right? So that sort of dynamic tends to work out very well. And it just naturally allows people to fall into their natural roles. Because the thing is that women have the same programming as us. We're raised in society where women are told, you got to get a guy that puts you on a pedestal. You got to get a guy that values your input, that you got to get a guy that treats you as an equal partner. You got to get a guy that's your best friend and stuff. But when you start implementing that stuff, it's just not natural to our evolutionary psychology. And so women get the ick when you start doing all the stuff that you're told to do. Women just don't understand why they're not attracted to, you, even though you're doing everything right according to what society says. So you've got to get rid of those unhelpful paradigms and go back to more of a conventional masculine approach when leading a relationship, because they naturally respond to that. They're like, "Oh, I don't know why I shouldn't like this. I fucking love this." Right?
Right. No, we've talked about this countless times. People love toxicity. That's why the bad boy trope has always been an effective trope. They're rebellious. They go against, like, I know I shouldn't like this, or they're not doing what's the norm, but I'm into it. I was like, you could be a bad boy and not be a piece of crap. You could be a bad boy and still be a responsible, functional adult. So in your relationship, being a bad boy just means, hey, I'm not going to pussyfoot around you. I don't walk on ice. I lead. I take a confident step in the direction that I want to do. And I just, like you said, I grab your hand. I guide you to the restaurant. I lead. Every once in a while, you're like, you may be directionally challenged like me, and you might need a little assistance, but for the most part, where we go is where we go.
Great example of that is a Spider-Man 3, right? Spider-Man 3, when Tobey Maguire, got the Venom sort of influence in him, and he started becoming bad boy Peter Parker.
Oh, yeah.
There's a scene where he's talking on the phone, and his neighbor comes up, and he's like, "Huh? Go make me some cookies," or
bring me some milk.
Yeah, do you have any cookies? And she goes, "Oh, well, I can make you some." He's like, yeah, go make me some. Right?
Yeah.
That's all that kind of stuff. Like, chicks are kind of into it because he's like, he doesn't care what she's doing. He's being mysterious. She's got to figure him out. And then he's telling her what to do, which is dominant. She's like, yeah, I'll go make cookies. Like, it just sort of makes her naturally feel, like in her femininity. So they're drawn to that. They're like, what is this guy about? He's not needy. He doesn't need me. He's like, yeah. Go make me some cookies. Like, chicks are like, what? And women are like cats. If you chase them, they run away. But if you act very indifferent to them, they want to climb on your lap and show you their butthole. Like, it's fascinating what women respond to versus what they say. And so that's why the bad boy thing gets out there. But yeah, you're right. You don't have to be toxic. You can actually act in her best interest while still doing those types of things. And that's where leading a healthy relationship comes into play.
No, yeah, 100%. I agree. Well, Paul, we covered a lot of great topics, and I know there are at least 10 gems in here that any bachelor or guy in a relationship who's starting out feeling a little shaky can use to solidify that relationship and become the leader that he needs to be in that unit. So just thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get out of here, guys, you got to go show Paul some love. You have another podcast to listen to now. You guys air on Mondays. Is that correct?
I have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So you can listen to it on your favorite podcast platform of choice or YouTube.
Alrighty, perfect.
It's called the Come On Man podcast.
That's right. I'm going to also leave a link to it down below. So click that and follow him to you. And I'll make sure to add his website below too. I'm not the only coach out there. Sometimes you need more than one. All right. That's the reason we have an offensive and defensive coordinator.
So many guys in this space that need help. There's one coach can't possibly help every guy out there. And some of us, we sort of niche in a certain area of coaching, right? So I don't really do date coaching. I really am about coaching men who are finding themselves in a dead bedroom situation, right? They've been in a relationship with a girl for 15, 20, 30 years. And it's just completely gone cold, and they have no idea how to turn things around, but they don't want to divorce her because they love her and they've got all this investment. It's like, yeah, this can be turned around, bro. So yeah, book a free call with me. You can do that if you go to call.fixdeadbedrooms.com. That'll take you to my Calendly. You can book a free session with me.
Perfect. You heard it right from the goat's mouth. Like you said, there's so many different seasons that we live on, so many different guys that I do a lot of the pre-work before you would get to Paul. I help you get in that door, secure your date, find your relationship, and then the rest is up to you. After you leave me and you're needing some more help, once again, book that call with Paul.
Right? So after you're done working with Josh, right, get Everything I Wish I Knew When I Was 18 and really listen to that long-term relationship chapter 10 to 15 times. Really just let that seep into your subconscious and lead your relationship that way. And then you'll never have to call me. You will never have to call me if you just do that.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of another episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this episode, and go follow Paul. Until next week, I'll see all you bachelors and bachelorettes.